you. Well, it's very exciting to be here. Thanks for having me, David. And it's very exciting to be doing a TED Talk. I've been watching TED Talks for a really long time. And as opposed to the little crocodile you saw just before, I can run for a really long time. And as a consequence, I was able to run all these marathons around the world. And everyone says to me, you know, Tristan, so why did you run 52 marathons around the world? That sounds kind of nuts. And I like to say, well, it's not so much about why I started running around the world, but more why I started running in the first place, running at all. And I honestly believe that life is very much about best laid plans. You know, we plan to become astronauts or accountants or, you know, wonderful things, work in zoos and that sort of stuff. We start dreaming about that from a really young age, except maybe the accountancy thing. We go on to get a good education and, you know, maybe go to university and you know, maybe sort of start progressing in our career and hopefully somewhere along the way meet someone special and, you know, build up a family and, you know, all generally pull it together just as our parents did before us. And I did feel like I was doing that. I was heading in that direction until I turned about 28 and then my beautiful wife decided that she wasn't as in love with me anymore. In fact, she said she still loved me, but she wasn't in love with me anymore, which, you know, was a bit of a blow to myself. It was a bit heartbreaking at the time, but I thought, okay, you know, like I know how I can fix this. I'll go to the pub and I'll get really, really drunk. And so subsequently, you know, after my divorce, I got drunk and I got drunk a few times. In fact, I stayed drunk for about 4 months because I thought that was the best way to tackle things at the time. That's the way that I was going to fix myself. And unfortunately, because I was failing in my personal life, I started to drink a lot and fail in my professional life. You know, you can't sort of manage yourself if you're sort of half cut all the time, so you start not doing so well at work. And I was working at a fantastic radio station in Melbourne, 3AW, a talkback radio station there, and I was working in sales. And I was doing quite well for myself. I was going okay, of course, until I started drinking a lot. And then some of the guys at work started to notice that I was falling away a little bit, you know. And one of the guys, a fellow named Rob, said to me, Tristan, I don't know what's been happening in your life for the last few months, but you just seem to have switched off. You don't seem to be very present and you're not really here and I'm just a bit worried about you. And I was just wanting to maybe go for a run with you on the weekend and have a chat about it. And I'm like, well, sure, Rob, but, you know, mate, you're a marathon runner and I can run about 3 or 4 Ks and that's about it. So I don't want to disappoint you. And he goes, mate, let's just go for a run on the weekend and we'll have a chat. And what was really special about that was Rob's actually, you know, a very busy guy. He's got 2 young kids and one of his children actually suffers cystic fibrosis. So, like, he's got a lot on his plate already. And that running time is his meditation time. And he was prepared to spend some of that time listening to my relatively lame problems, you know, of the end of my marriage. And but he did, and I felt really good at the end of it. And I felt so good, in fact, that I wanted to do it again. And he said, mate, let's do it again next week. Sure enough, a week later we ran again. And we ran on all these subsequent weeks and I started to feel so good that I just wanted to run more often. So, you know, every time you run, you feel better. They've been prescribing that for depression for many years now, except I didn't know about it until I was depressed and someone egged me on for a run. And so every time I started running, I felt good all the time and I'm thinking, God, this is a great lifestyle, isn't it? And Rob says, mate, you should run the Melbourne Marathon with me. And I'm like, buddy, you're nuts. I'm never going to run a marathon. That's just not in me. You're a guy that can run marathons because you have the mental fortitude and the strength and capacity to drive on where most people would just fail. I don't know how you do it, but, you know, I'm pretty happy with just these 15K runs that we're up to. And he's like, okay, we'll get to it. And so a couple of months later, I actually ended up doing a half marathon. You know, I met him halfway and did a half marathon. And I felt pretty good about myself and I got over that line. And I've got a little picture of that for you, where I got across the line. I ran it with a few of my mates, and when we did it, you know, I was wearing this cotton material and all that kind of stuff, and you work out very quickly when you're doing running distance like that cotton rubs a lot. So I was kind of bleeding in all these awkward places, and that was all a bit uncomfortable, and yet I'd done a half marathon. And I said, Rob, I can't believe it, I made a half marathon. How did I do it? And he goes, buddy, let's run the marathon together. I said, yeah, I can do it. And he goes, cool, because I already signed you up 3 months ago. And I'm like, oh, you knew I had it in me, you know? Rob just knew something about me that I didn't know about myself. And that was a really impressive thing. I felt really good about that. And so sure enough, you know, a few months later, we go and run our first marathon. And at the 10K mark, I'm like running along going, yeah, I can do this. This is awesome. Running from Frankston into Melbourne along the bay there. And 21Ks, I'm like, yeah, it's not so awesome, but I'm still okay. And then at 30Ks, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. This is the worst experience of my life. What am I doing here? And I'm pulling Rob back at this point. I'm like, Rob, I can't keep it up. You've got to go. You've got to go. So Rob takes off and I struggle along. I'm going, oh my God, I feel so sick. How did it get to this? I was feeling so good and still got like 10Ks to go. And I'm thinking, man, I've just got to keep moving, got to keep moving. Focus on the achievables, you know, go to that next K marker, go to the one after that. Just keep going. And then I see the turn off to my house and I'm like, I could get a tram home, you know. But what I knew was this is a defining moment of my life, you know. This was a benchmark for me. If I give up now, I might start giving up on everything. And so I had to find a way within myself to just lift. You know, I'd done all this training. I knew I could get there, just start pushing. And so I started to run again. It was a bit of a hobble, you know, it wasn't pretty, but I got there anyway. And I got to the end of that race and Rob was there and, you know, he was like high-fiving me and stuff at the end and I'm sitting there going, I can't believe it. I can't believe I did something that I thought was so impossible, you know? Because previously it was impossible for me, only because I'd made it impossible for me. And I thought, okay, you know, if that's the way my life is now, I can do impossible things. What are all the other things I've been missing out on in my life that I've always wanted to do, but I always put it off because I just thought other people did it? Well, I want to travel more, you know? So I went travelling. I went to Berlin, I went to Tokyo, I went to all these amazing places. And then I thought, okay, and I want to do more sports. So I had a go at doing a triathlon. And it wasn't pretty, but I got through it. And I don't recommend that people wear tight lycra like this to do a triathlon, but I was trying to impress a girl. So I thought it would work out. Unfortunately, it didn't. And I got myself through a triathlon and I thought things are going pretty well in my life. In fact, they're going so well that I think that I'm going to do something else. I'm going to try to progress my career. I'm going to try to do something vastly different with myself and where my life is headed in my career. And so I'm going to apply for digital advertising as opposed to analogue or radio advertising. And so I applied for the biggest company I could find, Google, you know. The biggest digital company in the world. And people are going, you'll never get a job at Google. Maybe not. You know, they only employ people with all these amazing skills and these amazing advantages. Why would you get a job at Google? I said, why wouldn't I get a job at Google? You know, let's go find out. Unless I go through the process, I'll never know. And sure enough, 6 months later, 8 interviews, I got the job at Google. You know, how cool did I feel? I'm such a hero, you know, I'm doing everything right at the moment. And I thought, if I can do that, if I can get the amazing job at Google, what other amazing things could I do? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do another big physical challenge. And I wanted to go over to South Africa to do a 90K race called the Comrades Ultra Marathon. That's 2 marathons. How awesome's that? And so I thought, okay, we're going to go over there and we're going to have a crack and we'll just see how it turns out. And unfortunately, as I was just about to leave to go for that race, a terrible thing happened in the world, you know. A global economic crisis, like a tidal wave, washed across the world and washed all these jobs away, including mine, including my dream job at Google. I'm like, that's terrible. What am I going to do? Well, of course, I'm going to go for a run because the running makes me feel better. So I went to South Africa and I did a 90K race. And it was such an amazing feeling to run 90Ks and get to the end and finish that thing in 9 hours and 18 minutes. And of course I felt like a hero. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But I felt like an absolute champion. And the great thing about going to South Africa and going travelling is you get to see lions, you know? Lions and elephants and giraffes and little lions tearing apart baby buffaloes. And I'm thinking, how good's life? I want to see more life and I want to run more. So why would I go back and just get another job? In fact, better than that, why don't I go home and just get rid of everything? Because what do I need it for anyway? If I'm going to go and see the world, I need to come up with a really good plan. So I came up with this crazy plan of running 52 marathons in 52 weeks all around the world. And I thought I could do that. If I could go to a different place every single week, maybe I could see the whole world in just 1 year. And in fact, if I could just run a marathon every week, maybe I could get some sponsorship or get a bit of interest. But it was a global economic crisis. So it's a terrible time to ask for money when everyone's losing their job. So I figured, okay, I'll just pay for it myself. I'll get rid of the mortgage, as I said, and I'll get rid of all my stuff, and I'll see how things turn out. And I'll put this plan together, and I'll go to all these places around the world. and just see what happens. And everyone's like, man, if you try to go to all those different places and run a marathon, you're going to get sick. You're going to, get jet lag, terrible case of jet lag. You're going to get, definitely, probably get injured. And, but, what else could go wrong? Well, I'm like, okay, they're the things that might happen to me, but I'm also going to see all these amazing places. And I'm going to get to go to Rwanda and see gorillas. And I'm going to get to go to Easter Island and see those crazy heads that they have on the island and all that kind of stuff. I want to see all those places. And so all I need to do is put a plan together, like my marathon plan, get to the start line and just see what happens after that. I'm definitely going to hit the wall in the middle. Bad things are going to happen. But if I just keep going and just find the next K marker, maybe I can achieve it. Maybe I'll just go and see what happens. And so I put this amazing website together called runlikecrazy.com, a really cool name for a really crazy adventure. And I started telling all the media about it. And when I got my face in the Age in Melbourne, all my mates called me up and go, mate, you've really done it now. Like, now it's in the paper, you have to do it, And I'm like, yeah, I really do have to do it. I really owe it to myself to do something special. And I got this special photo done. And I said to my mum, look, Mum, just in case I don't make it, at least I look this good just before I left. It's the fittest I've ever been. It's the proudest I've ever looked. And who knows how things are going to turn out. And they kind of turned out a little bit like this.
Beatle John Lennon once said that life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. Just ask ordinary Australian Tristan Miller. Like most of us, he's experienced his share of personal and professional setbacks. Unlike most of us, those setbacks led him onto a remarkable path of challenge and self-discovery. While the rest of us were busy planning life, Tristan decided to get out and live it, setting himself the seemingly unrealistic goal of running 52 marathons in the 52 weeks of 2010.
Look at that bad boy, from Asia into Europe.
Antarctica, we're right above now.
Oh my God, look where I am. And here I am in Cuba.
His odyssey would take him across all 7 continents and, in the process, inspire thousands of would-be adventurers worldwide.
I can't go back to the life I had. I would often be really excited about friends of mine that were travelling around the world that sent me emails about the cool things that they'd been up to. I was really addicted to hearing their exciting tales of their travels because it got me through my days. I don't see why I shouldn't be the guy that's doing all the adventures and other people can keep living vicariously. I don't think I want to be the guy sitting behind the desk anymore just hearing about it. If I really want to be greater in life or enjoy life a lot more, what's stopping me? I really hope I can continue to appreciate what the world has to offer and go out and give something back as well.
You've got a goal, you've got a dream, go for it and don't get stopped by no.
Yeah, it's marathon number 1 down at Fish River.
Get up and live as if you're going to die the next day.
Come with the boys. Woo! Tokyo.
Think big, be bold, and just get out there and do it.
Yeah, top of the world, man.
Don't ever give up, just go for it.
All for you. Bang. Still running. PB coming up. New York City. Marathon Antarctica. Marathon 52. Thank you.
If you're determined, you've got drive, anything really is possible.
So I had a hell of a year, huh? It was cool. It was cool, and they said it couldn't be done. And there were quite a few times where I honestly believed they were right, because I up to that date, up to 2010, I'd only run 6 marathons in basically Australia and 1 ultra marathon in South Africa. And then all of a sudden, I tried to do 6 marathons in 5 weeks in 6 different countries just in January alone. And I guess they were the first hurdles that I had to overcome. And each week I had a new K marker. Could I just get to that week and get it over with? And what if I did fail? What if I did fail 3 months in? That's okay. I've still nailed 12 marathons in 12 wonderful countries and seen some of the world, right? And yet every week, the week got better, you know, I got better at running, I felt prouder about myself, and then I just didn't want to let go of that end goal. Then no matter what happened, I was going to keep going. And I put huge hurdles in front of myself as well. I put a 100k race in front of me in Mongolia, and that was about halfway through the year. And I'd never run 100k's in my life, and I'd never run at altitude, and this area around Mongolia was at altitude, and I'd never done a trail race. So what did I do? 10 days before, I did 2 mountain marathons in 2 days, one in Switzerland and one down in Italy. And I managed to get through them, and I felt like death afterwards, of course. But then 10 days later, I'm running this race in Mongolia, and I come second, you know? How about that? I can do it. I can do anything. I'm unstoppable. Except for when you do all that and then you start running races in Mongolia and then you have a celebration dinner in Mongolia, that's when you get really sick because your immune system's kind of knocked about, right? And so unfortunately I got super, super sick in Mongolia after this fantastic win, and then I got on the Trans-Siberian Railway and came all the way across to Moscow. And unfortunately you get more sick when you're hanging out in toilets on trains around Siberia. And so I stayed sick for 2 weeks, and I couldn't talk to anyone either because it turns out all the tourists go from Moscow to Beijing, not the other way. And so I was kind of sitting there by myself trying to talk to Russians who don't speak any English and don't really care about you, going, oh, I don't feel very well, you know? And I lost about 5 or 6 kilos. I got myself down to about 65 kilos at that point. For a lad my size, that's kind of slim. And then by the time I got to Omsk, which was halfway, I was pretty much ready to give up. Omsk is this amazing little Siberian city that no one ever goes to, but it's an extraordinary place. And they have their own marathon, and they call it an international marathon because some guy from the Ukraine comes and runs it, you know? And yet I came and ran it too, which was pretty spectacular. And except that it was a 40-degree day, you know, it's not true. It was about 35 degrees. And I was still really sick, and by the end of it, I was throwing up. And so I'm like, wow, is this it? Is this where I give up and want to go home? And then I thought about all the things I'd seen while I was travelling. And I considered the fact that throughout my life, I've had endless opportunity. And that opportunity is because of the gift of education. And that gift is given to us by our government and by our family, and we don't take enough advantage of that. And when I was running through India, I was running along this one section of road, and to my left was this extraordinary sight of all these kids picking up stuff out of a river and then walking across the road to their shacks on the other side of the road and trying to work out if they could eat it or use it. And that was a real shock to me. But then you see little guys like this who, you know, even though they don't have any opportunity in life, they're still happy with their day-to-days. And for me, when I was at my worst, I thought, you know, even at my worst, I still chose to be here, chose to travel around the world and chose to do amazing things. Guys like this will never get that opportunity. And so it was up to me to suck it up and get up and start running again. I got to Finland, I started feeling better. A month later, I ran a marathon in Stavanger in Norway, and then did a 100k race the very next day around the island of Bornholm in Denmark. And so I just kept achieving. I went all the way down to Antarctica, I ran a race down there, and then I flew across to Melbourne and did my final race back home in Melbourne. And I got to come home and feel like a hero. For just 1 year, I'd done the most amazing thing. And it's because I put a plan down. I put a best laid plan down. I found the start line. I pushed my way through to the middle where everything went wrong, and I found myself looking for a way to solve that problem, to get around it, to keep pushing on. Because it doesn't matter how the goal turns out in the end. It's the process of getting there that's most important. And it's the fact that we have the opportunity to do that every single day if we want to. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all out in the track someday. I honestly think you should all run a marathon. It's a life-changing experience, and in fact, I think you should run 10, because it's not that hard. And if a cowboy like me can run a marathon, any of you can do it too. Thanks.